Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the complete free Flutter course presented by the same person, as always, myself. We're going to have a really quick video right now, and then we'll have a longer one later today. One of my subscribers asked me about why I include the const keyword before things like edge insets, and if I couldn't have written edge insets without the const keyword. And the simple answer is yes, I could have. You can always omit the const keyword if you want to. I don't think you're ever forced to use const, but that's not a good thing to do. I don't want to go into too much detail about what const is. Instead, we're going to talk about Linsync. But really quickly, the reason we're using const is a runtime constant. It tells the compiler that since we already know what it is at compile time, let's just create that object once, a single time, and reuse the same object multiple times for our projects, rather than creating a new object which might be exactly the same. So by using const, we're actually saving resources, we're saving RAM, we're saving memory or whatever else. So our projects can run more easily and they can become more performant. So obviously it's a good thing to do. But the next question becomes, how do I know when I can use const and when I cannot? And that's where Linsync comes in, because for myself personally, I don't know every single place I can use const. Now I have a pretty good intuition for it, of course, because I've used Linsync for a while. But when I started, I had no idea. And by the way, if you do see anybody use something like edge insets without using const, normally the reason they're doing that is they just forgot, or they don't have Linting turned on, so they just didn't realize they were making a mistake. But I would consider it a mistake. I think you should always have const before edge insets or anything like that. But that leads us to Linsync. So what exactly is Linsync? Linsync essentially is it's like rules, best practices that we can follow to make our code more readable or sometimes more performance with different things. It has all kinds of different rules in it. And Linsync is basically these rules we can install on our IDE to kind of help us along to write our code the correct way. And of course, Google has some Linsync rules automatically. And if you do use Android Studio, then certain Linsync rules will come pre-included with Android Studio. However, Google has this awkward thing where if they have a Linsync rule in Google, they absolutely must follow it. No matter what's happening, you have to follow it. And so as a result, Google ends up having many suggestions, right? They end up not being Linsync rules, they're just Linsync suggestions. So if you are using the automatic one in Android Studio, it's not going to be complete at all, because there will be many times when you don't want to follow those rules. And if it's a real Linsync rule in Android Studio, then the people at Google have to follow it. So as a result, they're quite hesitant to make things rules, and you end up with those suggestions. So as a result, I think it's highly recommended to install some kind of linter to help us out, to give us more suggestions, and to just tell us when we're doing something wrong, which is exactly where this comes in. And there are several different packages, but this is the one I use, lint. I learned about it from Ruto Mate, and I see no issue with it. It works perfectly fine. So this is what I'm going to use. And obviously this is from pub.dev. We can get it through going here, or just using that pubspec assist we have. So we're going to go to pubspec.yaml, control shift P, that was it, pubspec assist, and this is going to be the other one, dev dependencies. And I'm just going to type in lint, and you see this installs lint 1.3.0, which should be this one. Yeah, and there are a few different linters as well. If you just type in lint or linter, different ones will come up. I personally haven't used linter or effective dart, this one, but I think they're all going to be pretty much the same. I don't think there's anything wrong with using a different one. Okay, and now that we have this, so we're going to save this as always, and that's going to cause my Flutter pub get to run. And I'm going to right click on the root folder and hit new file, and we're going to make an analysis options.yaml. And this needs to be in the same folder as your pubspec.yaml. So this is the very, very root. It's further down than lib. And in this analysis options.yaml file, this is where we can set specific rules. And the first thing we want to do is import the lint rules that we just we just installed. So we're going to say include, and then we're going to say, and we don't have quotes here because this is a YAML file, package lint slash analysis options. It would help if I could spell .yaml like that. Okay, and once I save this, this is going to install all of the lint rules, and I won't be surprised if it then tells me that I made a lot of mistakes everywhere, or a couple of mistakes, I don't know. But on top of this, we can also set our own rules. I don't know if this is working yet. It's not telling me I made any mistakes. So let's try doing something. Yeah, it is telling me I have a lot of mistakes. So you can see now, if I pull up the terminal here, under problems, I have a lot of things. So here, prefer const with constant constructors. So this is one of the places where I completely missed it, simply because with constants, it has to be a runtime constant. Anything which you can change, anything which is dynamic, usually cannot be const. So a scaffold, normally I would have my own dynamic values. So normally it's not a const. But in this particular case, I hard-coded you are now signed in, and the text style is also hard-coded, it's never going to change. So in this specific case, I can put the const here. And if my linter hadn't reminded me, I would have had no idea. It would have been completely over my head. I'm not even going to lie. And then we also have this one. And C gives you that nice blue underline, so I can save it. But on top of this, we can also set our own rules. So something I might do. First, let me show you how. We can just say analyzer, and then we can say errors to upgrade something to an error. And we can have the different names of the specific of the actual lint rule. So I could say, for example, prefer const constructors. And of course, I would not do this because there will be times when I don't want to follow this lint rule. And if I do this, and I'm just checking if I made any mistake, it should be error, not errors. And now that I save this, anytime I don't follow this lint rule, it's not going to come back as a warning, it's going to come back as an error. So now it's really forcing me to follow this. Now, obviously, with this specific lint rule, I'm not going to, it doesn't make sense to have as an error. But there are others which do. For example, one that I got from Ade was to have return statements. If I have a missing return statement, I have that come up as an error because, that's what it should be. For example, I could say missing return error. So now if my function has a return attached to it and I don't have that return, it's going to come back as an error because obviously I made some kind of mistake, something's not going right. Another one that I normally use is missing required param. This should also be an error. And this is one I really like actually. And must be, so I'm just looking at my other screen to see other things that I personally have. Must be immutable. I do not want to use. I have it on my previous, on different projects. So these ones are upgrading the severity, but I can also downgrade the severity. Another thing that I might often do is tell my linter to ignore certain rules. The one which just drives me insane, which I always make sure to ignore, is avoid print. So we can say the name of the rule with that colon and then ignore. And in fact, let me show you how I get that name. So if I go to my home.dart, for example, it could be anywhere, and I can say print hello world. This is going to come back as a lint warning because we shouldn't have print statements in production code. But of course, this is not production code. So I want to have this. I want to be able to follow my, the flow of information. Personally, I use print statements much more than the debugger. So you can see it gives me the description, and this is the name of the warning. So here, avoid print. So I can also control click on this, by the way, and this is going to come up and give me more details, but that's for a later time. Now I can just copy what it says here, in this case avoid print if it wants to stay up. And it doesn't want to let me drag, but that's fine. And then I can just type it, avoid print, and ignore. And I could also just copy it from over here. So for example, I could say prefer const constructors, ignore. And the const constructors, I would never ignore this one. It was just an example. But yeah, avoid print. So now that I do this, this is no longer going to come back as a warning. So when I'm coding, this is great to have. So I can actually have my print statements wherever I want, and this isn't going to, yell at me or blow up on me. On the other hand, we can see here, we forgot my const. I'm going to add it here. And also in this text field. And this text field. And this one as well. Okay. And I'm just looking to see. Yeah, in my other projects, I have a few other lint things, which doesn't really make sense to use here. So yeah, I guess we'll go over those at later points. There is one more thing I want to go over, which is exclude. What exclude does is that it allows us to show different files in which we're not going to apply any of these lint errors or lint warnings. And you might be wondering, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to not lint a specific file? Well, that's actually going to lead us really nicely into the next video, where we're going to start working with a little bit of generated code. One of the things we can do these days is we can use different packages which make code for us. And that generated code sometimes doesn't follow the lint rules perfectly. For example, it might have the imports out of order, or it might create a class which we end up not using anywhere because we just don't need it. And then that's going to be a lint warning. It's going to say, why are you creating something and not using it? But I might want to use that in the future, or maybe it's just giving me 10 different classes and I happen to only use 8 of them. Well, I don't want to get that warning for the other 2, right? So rather than me going through and deleting that code, which will be put back when I run that generator again anyway, and it's just going to be frustrating. Or also I could ignore it at that point, but then again, when the code gets generated again, my commented out ignore, which I haven't showed you guys that yet. So let me actually show you how to do that. So for now, I'm just going to get rid of my ignore thing here, and that's going to give me this back. If I want to ignore a lint rule just for one specific place, not the rest, I can control click and here, ignore lint, avoid print for this line. And what that's going to do is just give the comments here, ignore, avoid print, and this way my linter knows to ignore the next line. So I can do this. It's really useful if I don't want to ignore the rule everywhere, but just in one specific place. So yeah, this is something I could do in a generated file, but then when that file gets generated again, then this comment is going to end up being deleted because it's rewriting everything. So as a result, let me put this back. Avoid print is going to be an ignore, which of course leads us to exclude. So we can either have specific files, or we can use regex to match different types of files. So some which I use would be star.star.g.dart, because a lot of generated files have that file name .g.dart. Another which I use, which we're going to see in the next video, are going to be star.star.freezed.dart, because the freeze package makes the generated files which end in the file name .freeze.dart. So yeah, and aside from that, I can also give the exact name of the file. So I'm going to get rid of my avoid print again, so we can see the warning over here, just so I can show you what this would look like. I can get the exact file path from here, so lib/greens/home, and save this. And now that I save this, assuming I haven't made a mistake anywhere, which apparently I have made a mistake, this should have ignored this. I might have to restart my VS Code or something like that, but I don't want to do that right now. Oh, because I missed .dart, that's why. You need to give the ending. Okay, it still doesn't want to do it, but after I restart VS Code, it should do that for me. I'm not exactly sure why it's not doing that, but it doesn't really bother me. But I was just trying to show you guys how to do that. For now, I'm going to put it back this way because this is the way I want it to be in the next video. So yeah, and then I can just get rid of my prints. I don't need this either. And yeah, that's going to be it for this video. Be sure to tune in for the next one where we're going to continue looking at block, and we're also going to take a quick look at the freeze package. But for now, myself, Vidius, I'm going to head out. Take care, guys.